We continue now at the top of Daf Samech Beis Meseches Kiddushin. This is Kiddushin Daf 69b. This daf is sponsored by Sean Kashani. Thank you for your sponsorship. If you would like to sponsor an Amr or Daf, see the description box below, and see the description box below to see how you can support this channel. On the previous Amr, the Gemara said that we see from the Psukim that the Beis HaMikdash is higher than all areas in Eretz Yisrael. That comes from the Pasuk. It's clear from the context, because the Pasuk says, Divrei Rivos Bisharech. It says there are arguments in your gates, V'kamta ve'olis, and then you'll get up and you'll go up to the Beis HaMikdash, clearly talking about Eretz Yisrael and going up to the Beis HaMikdash. As Rashi says, Divrei Rivos Bisharecha V'kamto V'yoliso Mikan Sha'Mikdash Gavoa Mikol Eretz Yisrael. This shows that the Beis HaMikdash is higher than all of Eretz Yisrael. T'cholz De'odea Stam V'chasa V'yolisa, because the idea is, again, you're coming from all the different sides of Eretz Yisrael, you're going up. So that we see from the Pasuk. Ela Eretz Yisrael Gavoa Mikol Aratzos Minolin. But from where do we know that Eretz Yisrael is higher up than all other lands? T'chsiv, as it's written, Lachein Hinei Yomim Boim Num Hashem Lo Yomer Od Chai Hashem Asher Helos B'nei Yisrael Me'eretz Mitzrayim. People won't say in the future that this is Hashem that took the B'nei Yisrael up from Eretz Mitzrayim. Kim Chai Hashem Asher Helev Asher Hevias B'nei Yisrael Me'eretz Tzafon Umikol Ha'aratzos Asher Idachtem Sham. Rather, it's Hashem who brought up Klal Yisrael from all of the different lands, from the land of the north and all of the lands. And so you see again that Eretz Yisrael is higher than all of the lands. And Rashi explains Asher Helev Asher Hevias B'nei Yisrael Me'eretz Tzafon, that brought up B'nei Yisrael from the land of the north, the Hainu Bavel, that refers to Bavel, Umikol Ha'aratzos Asher Idachtem Sham, and then from all the other lands as well, Uchsiv Asher Helo, and it says over here he brought them up. So again you see that Eretz Yisrael is higher than all other lands. And the Gemara continues, Ma'irya detani alu mi Bavel nisni alu Eretz Yisrael. But still, why does it say in the Mishnah they went up from Bavel? If you want to teach that Eretz Yisrael is higher than all the other lands, just say alu le'eretz Yisrael. They went up to Eretz Yisrael. And the Gemara says to that, Messiah Leila Rebbe Lazar, this is a support for what Rebbe Lazar says. The reason why it says they went up from Bavel is a support for Rebbe Lazar's statement. The Yom Rebbe Lazar, because Rebbe Lazar says, Lo Allah Ezra mi Bavel ad sha'asa kesolas nikia. Ezra did not leave Bavel until he left it like fine sifted flour. The idea is again that he left the genealogy in Bavel, that it was pure, and anyone who had any kind of disqualification, he brought up with him to Eretz Yisrael, v'ala, and then he went up to Eretz Yisrael. And the Gemara continues, Itmar, we have the following machlokas amoraim. Abaya Omar alu me'eleihem. Abaya says they went up on their own, they didn't have to be coerced. Alu me'eleihem tanan. When the Mishnah says they went up, it means again they went up on their own. Rava Amar Helum Tanan, but Rava says Helum, he actually forced them to go up to Eretz Yisrael. V'kamiflagi b'd Rebbe Lazar, and they're actually arguing about what Rebbe Lazar said, what we just quoted. The Yamar Rebbe Lazar, because Rebbe Lazar said Lo Allah Ezra mi Bavel ad sha'asa kesolas nikia. It says that Ezra did not leave Bavel, he didn't go up from Bavel until he made it like fine sifted flour, v'ala, and then he went up. So Abaya less laid Rebbe Lazar. Abaya, who says that they went up on their own, he does not hold like Rebbe Lazar. Rava is laid Rebbe Lazar, but Rava he holds like Rebbe Lazar. And Rashi explains, Messiah Leila Rebbe Lazar, it's a support for Rebbe Lazar. Dinakatana didon lishna yaseir la'ashmin, and the Tana uses this extra language to teach us. Shekalatzmo shel Ezra lenakos as Bavel neskavin, that Ezra's entire intention was to cleanse Bavel, that Bavel again should have no flawed lineage. Lafi shero assumption esarvu behen, because he saw it was mixed up. V'ro shoyachach mehador olenimo, and he saw that all the sages they're going up to Eretz Yisrael, so we can't leave Bavel in this disqualified state with no sages around. There's going to be no chacham in Bavel to deal with this. In order to keep the lineage. So Amad v'hifresh pesulei, and so therefore he took all of those who were disqualified in any way, and he brought them with him to Eretz Yisrael. And therefore the generation that saw that they were being separated, they recognized these individuals, and therefore again they were able to be careful that there shouldn't be any mixing in ways that was not allowed. And for future generations also, since it said that the Sanhedrin was there, so since you had the Sanhedrin over there, that they were located in the Lishkas Hagazos by the Beis HaMikdash, they were able to make sure that the lineage was protected. Halum al Karcham, again, we have an opinion. This is the opinion of Rava, that he brought them against their will. And so the Gemara says, Rava, who says that he brought them against their will, he holds like Rebbe Lazar. The Rebbe Lazar says the whole point was Ezra wanted to make sure to bring all of those who were disqualified in any way up to Eretz Yisrael. That's why he had to force people to come along with him. And Abaye, who does not hold of Rebbe Lazar, says that they went up on their own. He did not have to force anyone. And the Gemara continues, if you want, I could say, the Kuli Alma Islu de Rebbe Lazar. It could be everybody agrees. Even Abaye agrees with Rebbe Lazar that Ezra made sure to bring up anyone who had any kind of disqualification. V'hacha b'haka miflagi. But the machlokes here between Abaye and Rav is as follows. Mar savar afrushe afrushinu minafshayu sliku. One says that he separated them, but then they went up on their own. That's what Abaye says. Umar savar, and the other one says, Bal korchayu asukinu. He also brought them up on their own as well. And Rashi explains, Afrushin, he separated them. Now, once they were separated, then people recognized them, and they didn't want to mix with them. So then on their own, they figured on their own they'll go up with Ezra, Eretz Yisrael to Eretz Yisrael. That way no one will recognize them. And so that way they came up on their own, and that's what happened again, according to Abaye. According to Rava, no, even the bringing them up to Eretz Yisrael was something that was forced. But the Gemara continues, it makes sense according to Abaye, who says they went up on their own because they purposely wanted to kind of sneak into Eretz Yisrael where people would not recognize them. That's what Rav Yehuda said, that Shmuel said, Kol haratzos Isa Eretz Yisrael, ve'Eretz Yisrael Isa lebavel. All lands are like Isa, they're like dough, meaning to say they're not as pure lineage when compared to Eretz Yisrael. And Eretz Yisrael is Isa lebavel, that's not as pure as Bavel. So that makes sense that Eretz Yisrael is not as pure as Bavel, because you have people trying to sneak in when they realized they were separated in Bavel. But according to the one who says that Ezra actually forced them to go up, in that case everybody knew who they were, so Meida Yodinu, so everybody knew who they were, so why is Eretz Yisrael any less than Bavel? In Eretz Yisrael also everyone knows who the disqualified ones are. And the Gemara says to that, Nehida Yodi Lahudara, granted that generation knew who everyone was, but Ladara Achrini Lo Yadi, but for future generations they did not necessarily know, and that's why Eretz Yisrael is considered Isa Labavel. And the Gemara says, Bishlam Alaman Damar Alu, it's good according to the one who says that they went up on their own. Hainu Dichsiv, that's what it means when it says in the Pasuk, Ve'ek B'tseim El Hanor Haba, El Ahava, V'nachen Hasham Yamim Shlosha, V'avina Ba'amu V'kohanim Umibnei Levi, Lo Matzasi Sham. It says in the Pasuk that Ezra says that I gathered them by the river that goes to Ahava, and we camped there for 3 days, and then I discerned among the people and among the Kohanim, and I didn't find anyone from Bnei Levi. So the point is, if you're saying that they went up on their own, so Ezra had to go at the river, and he had to figure out the lineage of each individual. El Laman Domer Helam, but according to the one who says that he forced them to go up, so Hamizar Zahiri, so they were already being careful, they already knew the lineage. So why by the riverside did he have to go and figure everything out? And the Gemara says to that, Nihid de Izur b'psulim b'ksherim lo izdar. It's true that he was careful in terms of those with disqualifications, but he wasn't yet careful with those that were kosher to figure out who's Kohanim, who's Leviim, and Yisraelim, and so that's what he did when he was by the river. And Rashi explains, Bishlam Alaman Damar Shalom Eileim, it makes sense according to the one who says they went up on their own, Velo Hikiru Bahem Ha'olam Imam Kalkach, so therefore they didn't really recognize everyone that was going up. Hainu Eretz Yisrael Isa LaBavel, that makes sense that Eretz Yisrael is Isa to Bavel, meaning Safik Yichosu Eitzel Bavel, meaning compared to Bavel, there's more doubts of the lineage. Shanasus Bavel Kesolas Nikia, because again, Bavel is like a fine sifted flour, Ruvenei is Eretz Yisrael, Lo Hikirim Kalkach V'yesha Nidbeku Imam, but Eretz Yisrael, it wasn't so clear who is who. Isa means Safik Erevin, that's like a doubt of a mixture. Ki Isa Zusha Ma'arvin Basa'or, Mayim V'kemach, Melech V'subin. Again, it's like a dough where you have a mixture of all kinds of ingredients. Kol ha'aratzos Isa Psoles Eretz Yisrael. When you compare other lands to Eretz Yisrael, they're like Isa, they're like Psoles. Lefisha B'nei Eretz Yisrael, Asukin Livdok B'yuchsim Lefisha HaKohanim Mitzuyim Sham. Since you have Kohanim in Eretz Yisrael, they're always careful about lineage. Eretz Yisrael Isa LaBavel, and again, Eretz Yisrael is like Isa to Bavel. She'ezra Hefrisham V'yatzim Misham, because again, Ezra separated them out, and Bavel therefore has purer lineage. Elamandamar Helam Tanan, but according to the one who says he forced them up, Holu Val Karcham Helam Im Elu, since he forced them to go, Yatza Kol Psolalim, there's already a kol that goes out. Everybody knows, the word goes out that they have a certain disqualification. Vakol Yadu B'Psul, and everybody knows about the disqualification. V'nizru Behem Kol Olam, and therefore everyone's careful. Everyone who goes up is careful, and they know who is who. And then the Gemara says that it says in the pasuk Va'avina Ba'am, it says they stopped by the river, and Ezra had to make sure mihayu milohaya. He had to make sure about everyone's lineage. Shma mino lo yada Ezra mi ala imo. Don't we see from here that Ezra did not know who went up with him, umi lo ala imo, and who did not go up with him. V'savar shayu sham leviim ksherim. He thought that there were leviim ksherim among them. V'lo matzu ru'im la'avoda, and he didn't find anyone that was fit for the avoda. Elo meosan shekatzu bahonos yadayim b'shinayim v'amru eich nashir es shir Hashem b'mizmor al naros bavel, except for those that cut off their thumbs with their teeth, and they said, how can we sing the song of Hashem? Shamar lehem Nebuchadnezzar shiru lanu mishir Tzion imdu v'katzu bahonos yadayim. The story is Nebuchadnezzar said that they should sing the song of Tzion, and they cut off their thumbs b'shineim with their teeth. V'yamru lo eich nashir es shir Hashem al admas nechor lo nashir lo nemar lo eich nashir. They said, how can we sing the song of Hashem al admas nechor? It doesn't say al admas nechor lo nashir, it says eich nashir. Ein lanu b'amel lemashmesh b'nime hakinoros. What they meant to say was they couldn't do the instruments. They didn't have all their fingers. So from those they had Leviim, but otherwise they didn't. Those ones stayed in Bavel, everyone else. Rashi points out that the Leviim that are mentioned in the Mishnah that they went up, that's the ones who were not fit to do the Avodah. And Rashi continues, Mizar Zahiri Buhu, again, if they forced them to go up, weren't they careful regarding their lineage? Didn't they know who went up and who didn't? And again, the Gemara then answered that by the Psulim they knew, but they didn't know with regards to the Ksherim, and that's why they needed to take an accounting by the riverside. And the Gemara continues that the two dots, Kohani, Leviav, Yisraeli, it says that from Bavel came up Kohanim, Leviim, and Yisraelim. And the Gemara says, Menolon Desliko, from where do we know that they all went up? That Kohanim, Leviim, and Yisraelim all went up from Bavel, Dechsiv, as it's written in the Pasuk, Vayeshva, Kohanim, V'haleviim, Min Ha'am, V'hameshorim, V'hashoarim, V'hanesinim, B'areim, V'chol Yisrael, B'areim. It mentions over here Kohanim, Leviim, and Yisraelim. You see that they all went up from Bavel to Eretz Yisrael. And then it said, Chalolei, Geir, V'charurei. The other category is Chalolim and Gerim, converts, and Charure, freed slaves. And the Gemara says Chalolim and Nolan. From where do we know that Chalolim went up from Bavel? The Tanyas we learned in a Brayso, Rabbi Yossi Yomer, Rabbi Yossi says, Gedola Chazaka, Chazaka, when you have a presumptive status, that is great. Shenemar, as it says in the Pasuk, Umibnei HaKohanim, and from the children of the Kohanim, B'nei Chavaya, from the children of Chavaya, B'nei HaKotz, B'nei Barzilai, from the children of Hakotz, from the children of Barzilai, Asher Lokach Mibnos Barzilai Hagiladi, that they took from the daughters of Barzilai Hagiladi, Isha, wife, Vayikra al Shemam, and called by their name. Eila, so these Bikshu, when it came to these Bikshu Chesavam, HaMesiyachasim, they wanted to find documents that show their Yichus, Velo Nimsu, and it wasn't found. Vayegoalu min HaKahuna, and therefore they were exiled from the Kahuna. Essentially, we're talking over here about Chalolim. Vayomer Hatirshasa lehem, and Hatirshasa said to them, Asher lo yochlu mikodesh hakodashim aramod kohen leurim v'tumim, that you shouldn't eat from the kodesh kodashim until the kohen stands up by the urim v'tumim, until we clarify what your yichus is. V'yomer lehem, and he said to them, Hareatem b'chazkaschem. What he essentially said to them was, since we don't know your exact lineage, we're going to go by your chazaka. That's what Rabbi Yossi is saying over here, Gedola Chazaka, that Chazaka is great. Ba'meha yisam ochlam begola, what did you eat when you were in the exile? Because she'agvul, you ate what's called the Kodesh, the sanctified foods that are outside of the area of Eretz Yisrael, meaning you ate Truma. So afkanami because she'agvul, for now, you're allowed to eat from Truma. But the Gemara says, but how could that be? According to the one who says that we can say that if a person's eating truma, then we're allowed to be mala them, we can raise them up as a kohen in terms of their yichus, meaning eating truma alone is evidence that you're a kosher kohen. So hani dachol betruma, so that's not a good solution, because these individuals who are now being allowed to eat truma, asu lasukina, we're going to raise them up and we're going to say that they're pure kohanim. And the Gemara says, no, Shani Hasam Dereach is Kasayu. It's different over there because their chazak has already been ruined somewhat, so it's not an issue. We wouldn't come to raise their status. And Rashi explains, Shani Hasam Dereach is Kasayu. It's different over here because their chazak has already been bad. Lo Itzrich Lemechash Lahai. We have no concern that from the fact they're eating Truma, we're going to raise up their status. To cave in the Shar Kohanim Ochlim B'Kodshe HaMikdash, because since other Kohanim are eating Kodshim from the base HaMikdash, Vehim Nagoalu Mehem, and they're not allowed to have that. They're only allowed to have Truma. Hura chazkasam, so then their chazaka is already bad. V'yesh b'am heker, it's already recognizable that they're different. V'lo asu lasukina, we're not going to end up raising them up, so that's not a concern. But the Gemara then continues, Ve'lamai gedola chazaka, but if there's no concern over here, so what's so great about the chazaka? Of course they should be allowed to continue eating truma if there's nothing to be concerned about. And the Gemara answers to that, the reason why it's great chazaka is because originally when they were in Bavel, they were only eating truma derabanan. There is no truma d'oraisa in Bavel. Well, b'truma d'oraisa. Now they were even being allowed to eat truma d'oraisa. That's why Rabbi Yossi said the chazaka is so great. If you want, I could say liolam hashtanami b'derabanan achol b'doraisa lo achol. It could be that right now they're allowed to eat truma derabanan, they're not allowed to eat truma d'oraisa. And when we say that you can be raised up from truma to in terms of your yichus midoraisa, that's only true if you're eating truma d'oraisa. Midrabanan lo maskin, and we wouldn't raise you up just because you're eating truma d'rabanan. But the Gemara says still, if so, if all they're eating is truma d'rabanan, my gedola chazaka. What's so great about the chazaka? They're not being allowed to do anything other than truma d'rabanan. And the Gemara says, no, it's still a great chazaka, the meikara leka lemigzar misham truma d'oraisa, because in the beginning, when they were eating truma d'rabanan in Bavel, there was no reason to be concerned, because there is no truma d'oraisa there. You didn't need to make a gezerah. Levasov, but now at the end, when they're in Eretz Yisrael, there's a reason to say maybe stay away from truma d'rabanan, because you might come to eat truma d'oraisa. Afagav deika lemigzar misham truma d'oraisa, even though there's a possibility to make a gezerah because of truma d'oraisa, but still chazak is so great. B'd'rabanan echol, b'doraisa lo echol. They were allowed to eat truma d'rabanan, they couldn't eat truma d'oraisa. But the Gemara continues, is this really true that they couldn't eat truma d'oraisa of aksib? But isn't it written in the pasuk Vayomer hatirshasa lehem asher lo yochlu mikodesh hakodashim? It says that they can't eat from the kodesh hakodashim. That sounds like it's saying bekodesh hakodashim hu lo yachel. They're not allowed to eat from the kodesh hakodashim. Hakol midi nechel, but apparently they are allowed to eat anything else. It sounds like they would be allowed to eat truma d'oraisa. And the Gemara says, no, that's not what the pasuk means. Hachi kamar. This is how you understand the pasuk. Lo midi de mikri kodesh, v'lo midi de mikri kodshim. They can't eat from anything that's called kodesh, and they can't eat from anything that's called kodshim. Lo midi de mikri kodesh. They can't eat from anything that's called kodesh. Dechsiv, as it's written, v'chol zor lo yochal kodesh. That a non-kohen can't eat kodesh. That's talking about truma. So that pasuk is saying they cannot eat truma d'oraisa. V'lo midi de mikri kodshim, and they also can't eat anything that's called kodshim. Diyamar kras. The pasuk says uvas kohen. If a bas Kohen marries a man who's a zar, who's not a Kohen, he betrumas hakodashim lo sochel, she cannot eat from the trumas hakodashim. What is the trumas hakodashim? V'yamar mar, the master said, b'mura min hakodashim. We're talking about that which is lifted from the kodashim. That's referring to the chaz of Ashok that generally goes to the Kohanim. And Rashi explains, v'chol zar lo yochal kodesh, the non-Kohen cannot eat kodesh. And again, that's talking about the fact they can't have truma d'oraisa over here. Kalosu when you medaber b'truma v'lo b'kachim. This entire topic of this pasuk is truma, not kachim. It's talking about truma, not korbanos. Techsivu v'ashemesh v'tar v'achad yochel min hakadosh. And the pasuk says that he purifies himself, and the sun comes down, and then he can eat the kachim. V'lekaluk me'ela b'truma. Clearly, that's talking about truma. Shemechusar kippurim mutar ba, because of mechusar kippurim, meaning one who's totally pure but just didn't bring the final carbon, is allowed to have truma. That's the context of that pasuk. So you can't eat anything. Again, these Kohanim who have the flawed lineage cannot eat anything that is Kodesh. They cannot have Truma d'oraisa. V'lo midi dikri kachim. They also can't eat anything that's called kachim. Chazav v'shok shel shlamim. Again, that's referring to the chaz and the shok of the carbon shlamim that generally goes to the Kohanim. The eshkachon the ikri kachim. That's referred to as kachim. B'mura min hakadashim. That which is separated from the carbon, meaning the chaz of v'shok, referring to the chaz of v'shok. And we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Ayin Amud Aleph.